Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Today we are reviewing last weekend's SummerSlam 2026 from Minneapolis, Minnesota. A two-night event, as WWE has been doing with both SummerSlam and WrestleMania for the last several years. And ultimately, before we get into it, I feel like this show is a really good example of why we either need to build these shows more properly, give them something more grand and big to justify the two nights, or stop doing this as a two-night event. Now, obviously, I understand it's a business decision. That's the whole reason that they are not going to stop doing this as two-night events. They can get double the money from fans buying tickets for these shows. But there is so much on both nights of SummerSlam this year that just felt like it could have been a TV match and nobody would have blinked an eye or noticed that it wasn't on the pay-per-view. It's become sort of a weird issue with WWE of late. It seems like Triple H is torn in two different directions, where on one hand he's trying to harken back to the prime era of NXT Black and Gold, where they had all of their shows, and they were all considered great because it didn't have a ton of matches on it, and all the matches on it were great, and most of them felt like they had really proper, good builds to them, especially in the main event scene. And it feels like he's still using that principle, and I don't think it's necessarily unfounded or a bad idea, but also his main event scene and kind of the rest of the card has felt like a bit of a mess. And I think that was on full display on this show. That being said, let's move in to night one of SummerSlam, which opened up with the Women's World Championship match, Liv Morgan versus Io Sky. Liv coming in as a champion who has not defended this belt since winning it at WrestleMania in April. It is August. It is insane how long she went without defending this belt, and it seems like it was out of a weird obligation that they created for themselves that no, we need to run back Stephanie Vaquer against Liv Morgan, and that's the plan, and Stephanie's just been hurt this whole time, so we're just gonna spin our wheels and wait for her to get back. And now normally if you're spinning your wheels and you're gonna do that, you at least have the champion defend against people, and you use it as an opportunity to get a shot for somebody you don't foresee ever winning that title, but you see as maybe in the future being a world champion, or at least higher up on the card than they are. It's a great opportunity to get them in that space, or even running back some, former world champions, or former, main event of the women's division sort of people, who are past their prime, or are not nearly as popular as they once were, and you sort of have them go after the belt because it feels like, okay, they're sort of trying to return to form. And they chose to do none of that. I think partially because you look at that Raw Women's division, who is somebody that has a lot of potential, that could get a lot by going after this belt right now and feeling like a bigger star? It's Roxanne Perez. But she's in the same group as Liv Morgan, and it feels like we are just never going to reach the point where Judgment Day actually blows up completely and everybody goes off in their own way, and we get some sort of satisfactory conclusion to this. So that was not on the table. Who else fits that mold in the Raw division? Well, you've got Becky Lynch, but she's been not doing a whole lot and has been pretty much missing from that division since dropping the Intercontinental Championship over there. So you're kind of missing both of them. And then, of course, you have Io Sky, who gets the shot here at SummerSlam and ends up not winning. The match itself was abundantly fine. Io Sky, really good, and I think she can have a good match with anybody, and she's sort of the part of this that elevates this up higher. Liv, I think, lives or dies by who her partner in the ring is, and did not have a bad match at all. And actually, the fact that this went 13 minutes makes it one of the longest matches of the entire weekend for WWE. It went 13:30. So, at least it got time to actually have, like, a good match. And, it was fine. I don't know that there's anything spectacular about it. We get the classic Judgment Day running interference mid-match. Ends up not costing Io then, but Io ends up eventually losing to Liv. And I'm just so flabbergasted by the idea of Liv Morgan still being champion. I think the Raw after SummerSlam sort of showed their hand and what they're doing. Stephanie Vaquera's back. Becky Lynch came out and had a promo on Liv Morgan and sort of mentioned her and brought it up. So it seems like we're setting up both of them as challengers for Liv going forward. So good on them for at least finally doing something with this women's division at the top that isn't just Liv standing around and calling herself the greatest champion while not defending the belt ever. Not even threatening to defend the belt ever. But I honestly probably would have just pivoted to Io at this point. I don't know how much you can do to recover Liv Morgan's title reign. And it doesn't feel like it's going to last very much longer, because I could honestly see them just putting the belt right back on Stephanie Vaquera and running that back and trying to do something with her there. Moving on from there, we have the 6-man tag team match of the Bloodline, Jacob Fatu, Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso taking on the team of LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, and Royce Keys. A little surprised that it was LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, and Royce Keys picking up the win here. And I mean that in the fact that it feels like WWE is trying to build the Bloodline back up because they see that as the most recent glory days of the company, and a lot of what they've been doing has felt like they are trying to reclaim that hot period they had a few years ago. And so we're going to run back a lot of the stuff that we would have done back then. Namely the Bloodline. And you've got Jacob Fatu sort of in the Solo Sikoa role now amongst that group. But then it's Jay, Jimmy, and Roman. Paul Heyman, not around. He's been busy with Brock Lesnar stuff and also leaving the Vision. So, you've got that going on, and it felt like this was setting up for either Solo Sikoa to turn heel and join the Bloodline again, or for the Bloodline to pick up a win because there's miscommunication between somebody on the other team. And we end up not getting that, and it's just a clean win for the good guy team. And Solo Sikoa, weirdly enough, feels like he is riding a big wave of momentum that he has not had since, like, tail end of his NXT days. And this is bigger than any of what he has ever done. And it's strange that that's what's going on. It almost feels like this should have been what he was doing when he left the Bloodline, or like took over the Bloodline in the first place, was being this kind of guy. And we don't get that for a while. And now we finally got there, and it's like, oh hey, they've figured out what to do with Solo Sikoa. As for LA Knight and Royce Keys, I mean, it's good to see them on the show. It's good to see them doing stuff. LA Knight has sort of hit this point where he feels like we've missed the boat on him, and he is just never getting to that level. I mean, he might, because, well, as we'll see kind of later when we discuss the Night 2 main event, where does Roman go from here with the main event scene over on Raw? And Royce Keys, always loved Powerhouse Hobbs, one of my underrated favorites from AEW, and his run in WWE has sort of felt very start-stoppy, and he's kind of just there as a third body right now. I don't know that he is really connected in any way with people coming over here, which kind of sucks, because I wanted to see him succeed over here. And it's not that he hasn't succeeded, it's just been very underwhelming, I think is the best way to describe it. As for the Bloodline, I'm sure we're gonna continue to get more Bloodline drama. We are in, like, chapter 932 of this saga of the Bloodline. At this point, who really cares? It's sort of like people stopping caring about the MCU after Endgame was over. We are in the post-Endgame era of the Bloodline. You know, Endgame was Cody finally beating Roman at WrestleMania to win the belt, and that's kind of, alright, the Bloodline can go off and do into the sunset and do their own thing. And no, we're going to keep clinging on to a lot of this stuff, and we're going to keep bringing it up and bringing it back. A weird thing that they love to do with Roman Reigns, apparently, just cling on to the past and keep talking about all the past stuff. Believe me, we'll get there towards the end of this. But yeah, I think it was sort of just a TV match put on a pay-per-view. Moving on, we have Nick Aldis making his WWE in-ring debut against Gunther. A really interestingly built storyline that I kinda dig. The idea that Nick Aldis, in doing his job as SmackDown General Manager, has run afoul of Gunther, who believes, and is somewhat justified, that he is being intentionally screwed over by Nick Aldis and his decisions in running the show, and therefore wants to have a match with him, and wants to get involved. And the fact that Nick Aldis is sort of the one who starts the physicality and starts building towards what eventually would be this match makes it really interesting, and I kind of dug it. On top of the fact I think Nick Aldis is just a good worker, and Gunther is Gunther. He's always going to be great. I was really looking forward to this match coming into this weekend. And I'm not going to say it lived up fully to my expectations. I would have said going into this, and I believe I even mentioned it in my predictions of this, I figured this was going to be a match that was a strong contender to steal the whole weekend. And people were going to be talking about this match coming out of it. And I don't think it lived up to those expectations, but it was still a very good match. It was one of the few things on here that actually felt like a proper, like, SummerSlam main card match. And I am honestly really happy with how it turned out for the most part. I think Gunther absolutely needed to win. Had Gunther lost to Nick Aldis, as much as I love Aldis, as much as I think he is a great worker, and I think he showed that in this match. Like, he looks like he has not missed a step in the several years since he last wrestled a match. There is no way that you can justify in storyline and on TV Gunther losing a match to somebody who has been presented as an office stiff and a suit backstage without really hurting Gunther. I mean, the most you could have done was if you knew who you were going to have Gunther go into a feud with after this, and had them maybe come out and interfere in the match, and cost Gunther the match by interference to set that up. That's about the only way you could do it, where you could still recover Gunther a little bit, and even then, it would have hurt him a little bit. And he is a guy that has needed some big wins for a little bit now, because post-career killer stuff, they seem to not know what they want to do with him, and he's sort of floundering on a main event scene to no fault of his own. I think it's just the booking is failing him. But yeah, very good match. Gunther wins by submission, and Nick Aldis came out to Morning Glory by Oasis. Oh my goodness, what a great song, especially for Aldis. Oh wow, and that he gets a big reaction too. I was surprised people reacted as much as they did to Aldis. Of course, you got Mickie James and their son at ringside. They're in the crowd, and they come out into the ring after the match is over and sort of have a celebration with Nick Aldis. Not the only time this weekend we'll see the family get in the ring with somebody and sort of celebrate after a match is over and give them their flowers. But again, we'll get there for night 2. We move on from there to the 6-woman tag match between the Bella Twins and Paige, taking on Fatal Influence of JC Jane, Fallon Henley, and Lainey Reed. Again, a match that feels like it could have been on TV and would have been fine. And of the entire weekend, this might be the worst worked match of the weekend. I mean, it was hard to watch at some points. Now, obviously, Brie does get hurt during this match. I believe it's a shoulder injury that she picks up in this match. I don't know exactly on what spot she picks it up, but at some point, it's clear she keeps holding her shoulder through the whole thing and is not as involved in about the midpoint of this match. And even after the angle after the match is over, the entire time she's still holding her shoulder. You can see when she's getting out of the ring, she's trying to do everything to not put her weight on that shoulder when she's getting out of the ring. And so I think there's part of it that is that, but also we're talking about Brie and Nikki Bella. They have never been good in-ring workers to begin with, and picking up an injury only makes it worse for Brie when it comes to that. And Paige is Paige. She looks better now in WWE than she ever did when she was in AEW for that run. I think she's a little more interested in what she's doing and is a little happier being there than she was in AEW. But also, she's not going to blow you away with what she's doing in the ring. And Fatal Influence, honestly, they looked pretty good in this match. I don't think that they, again, are lighting the world on fire, but they looked solid. They look pretty good in here. And I think Fallon Henley and JC Jane are both really strong workers. I think head and shoulders the best workers in this match with JC Jane and Fallon Henley. And Lainey Reed, not bad for as minimal experience as she has. She is surprising me with how put together she is currently. I think she's still a little green and has some work to do, but I think she is on the right path to doing that. And being with these other two in this group, I think, is only going to do good things for her going forward. And of course, Fatal Influence picks up the win. I think you have to do it. It's sort of like the Gunther thing, right? In a different way, but sort of similar. Fatal Influence is this new presence that you have in the SmackDown Women's Division. They are a group that, at points, has been involved with Rhea Ripley stuff. Obviously, they'd been going after the tag belts, and so had been involved with the Bellas and Paige. And if you want to build new big stars for that women's division, you need to have them pick up wins. And so, them winning the tag belts, and then going on to SummerSlam and winning the 6-woman tag, it's really good for them. It's a piece of just standard booking. It's most logical booking, but it's good. I'm glad that they are getting this opportunity and being put in this position, and I hope that they continue to find success. Of course, after the match, the Bella Twins and Paige are in the ring, and the Bella Twins turn heel on Paige. They beat her down, mostly Nikki, but Brie gets a couple kicks in. But the Bellas turn heel, and the entire time I'm like, yeah, this should have happened months ago. The Bellas' faces never works. They're not good. And if we were going to have them come back in and be a presence as sort of the veterans who were big in a bygone era, you might as well make them these dastardly heels that think that they're better than everybody because they have the credentials in their record book to show like they were at the top of this division at one point, and they sort of throw their weight around and act like they are bigger and better than everybody. It's weird to do that with Paige, who was also around for a good chunk of that era and was very clearly one of the top stars they had during her time. But I think having the Bellas as heels like that, it's a much better fit for them. That said, I don't look forward to Bella Twins promos, because their promos are worse than their in-ring, and their in-ring is already not very good. So we'll see what they do with them. I also just find it weird that we continue to try and push this idea that the Bellas were part of the women's revolution. Like, no, they were around for a lot longer than that, and they were in that era when we finally get the Divas Revolution, the women's revolution. During that period, they were the bad guys who had been around for a while and were looked at as the holdovers, the last bastions of that era, and the exact people we needed to move on from. So it's weird that we're presenting them as these like pioneers of that era when no, that was towards the end of their full-time active careers as wrestlers. We move on to the undisputed WWE Championship match as CM Punk defends his belt against Cody Rhodes. This went 30 minutes. It's one of the few matches that went longer than 13 minutes. And this one has sort of split the crowd, right? There are some people I have seen who absolutely loved this match and thought it was great. There are people I've seen who are going around and they hate this match, and they go, Cody and Punk don't have any chemistry together. I am in the camp that really liked this match. Of the main events of this weekend, this was easily my favorite one. I really, really, really enjoyed this match. It was one of the few ones that the way it was structured and put together, it felt like a proper main event that was built with a story in it that continued for the entire match and was actually put together like they cared about this match being good. And I think that they mostly stuck the landing on that. I think the one thing that drags it down is the weird Randy Orton return where he comes out and interferes in the match. I almost would have preferred him to come out after the match is over. You know, Punk celebrates his win, leaves the ring. Cody finally gets up after a grueling match, and then you get the RKO out of nowhere while Cody's in the ring sort of soaking in the crowd, presumably giving him cheers for a well-fought match. But we don't get that, and instead it's Orton in the middle of the match coming out. I also think that there is something to be said about it being weird that they don't turn one of these two guys heels. But then again, I look at that SmackDown main event division. That main event men's division on SmackDown looks really strong right now. It is just overflowing with talent over there. And you have enough heels in that division, you don't need to turn either of these guys heel. So I understand not doing it, unless you were going to move, Cody or Punk over to Raw. I understand not doing it. So I think it ultimately was a good face versus face match that felt properly like it belonged on this show. It's one of the few that felt like it properly belonged on this show. So yeah, Punk retains the belt against Cody. I think that was a smart decision as well. I think Cody winning this belt here would have meant Cody was going to get rejected. People are going to be sick of it, because people were already getting sick of Cody as champion, and it would have been, the second time this year alone that Cody drops the belt just to immediately win it back. So I think smart choice going with Punk. And honestly, with what we get on night 2, I'm excited for what Punk is doing next with this belt. And then we move on to the night 1 main event, Hell in a Cell. Brock Lesnar versus Oba Femi, Part 3. Oba at one point felt like he was this undeniable star, and I think he still does feel like he is a big star, and it's clear that they have big plans for Oba Femi going forward, but this weird, prolonged detour over to Suplex City to deal with Brock Lesnar has been a misfire. The first match at WrestleMania was awesome. Oba beats Brock in about 5 minutes. That cements him as a big deal and somebody that you need to pay attention to on this show. And I think it only helped to get him more over with a crowd, seeing him do that. And it seemed to be setting up what could have been a rookie year to rival Brock Lesnar's. And I think that's a really interesting thing. He starts it by beating Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, carries that momentum over to King of the Ring where he wins it, and then goes to SummerSlam and wins the title, just like Brock did, basically. And instead, we decided that, no, he needs to do a trilogy of matches with Brock Lesnar. And I don't necessarily understand that booking. A, because it means Brock has to win the second match, so you've already beat Oba on a big show now. And the third match, it's only there because it's happening in Minnesota, where Brock is from. And presumably, this was going to be Brock's final match. We'll see, because he did the retirement thing at WrestleMania, and now, myself included, there are a lot of people that don't necessarily believe Brock is actually retired this time. I think this is more likely he is properly retired, and I think because he didn't do it on TV and he made the announcement on the frickin' Pat McAfee show and got moved to the alumni section, WWE did a big write-up of it this time and put out all these videos celebrating Lesnar on the website. It feels a little more real this time. And also Brock sort of breaking character after this match was over, talking about Oba being the future and himself being the past. It felt like properly Brock is done now. But I could absolutely see him, come WrestleMania season, coming back out of retirement to do a match with somebody. Maybe Gunther. Maybe he does something with Gunther, and they do the whole career killer thing for Gunther again, this time with Brock Lesnar. We'll see. But I think that this detour has sort of made Oba feel stagnant because we had set up so much good stuff with him. He had beat Lesnar at Mania. He loses the rematch to Lesnar after that, and it's not great. But he immediately follows that up by winning King of the Ring. It's like, oh wow, I was not expecting Oba to win King of the Ring this soon. Because WWE loves to do these, we've got time, we're going to build them up for the future. It's a long process, and we're going to slow build to getting them over as this big star. And no, they're actually just going straight for Oba as a big deal. That's great, because they need something like that. That is the kind of youthful shot in the arm this entire company needs. Just for Oba to go, actually, I'm not going to use my guaranteed title match at SummerSlam, because there's the looming threat of Brock Lesnar, who did not interfere whatsoever and didn't even show up for my entire King of the Ring run, where it would have been more advantageous for him to come and interfere, because now I still have a guaranteed title shot, I guess? And the way that it's been presented, it seems like, yes, Oba still does have a guaranteed title shot coming out of King of the Ring, he just hasn't used it yet. Even though I think, in storyline, the whole point of King of the Ring is you get the shot at SummerSlam, and if you don't take it at SummerSlam, presumably you would just lose it. It's sort of like if you won the Royal Rumble, and then you decided come WrestleMania, actually, I don't want to take the title shot at WrestleMania. I'm gonna do something else. And then they go, okay, well, then you don't get your title shot, because you won the Rumble that is for WrestleMania specifically. King of the Ring has felt the same way, so it's weird for them to go, well, maybe he's still got the shot. We'll see. We'll see what they do with that. It seems to be more that, yes, he still has the title shot, he just hasn't used it yet. That said, we get this Hell in a Cell match that goes a little over 10 minutes and does not need the cell whatsoever. It is crazy in the build to this how many times they go to these arenas, make their crew build the entire Hell in a Cell just to use it for a grand total, I think, of half an hour of TV across several months and several arenas. Because this match goes just under 12 minutes. It goes like 11:30, I think. And you built the cell for this main event just to do that. On top of a couple of the segments on Raw, where they built the cell in the arena for a 5-minute segment. And then you get to this match, and they don't even utilize the cell in any way. There's no going to the outside and throwing people into the cage. There's no breaking through one of the walls of the cage and climbing up top of it. None of that stuff. It is just a normal match that they work in the ring that goes a little longer than they normally do. So I don't understand what the point of making this Hell in a Cell does, other than Lesnar technically, to this point, was undefeated in Hell in a Cell. You know, he only had the 2 matches, both against Undertaker before this, but he won both of them. So I guess they thought, like, oh, that'd be neat to have Oba beat Brock in this stipulation match. I mean, yeah, if the stipulation stayed protected the entire time, but you only just a couple years ago made the stipulation matter again. Before that, there was a whole pay-per-view that we did every year that had like 2 or 3 of these matches on it that had absolutely no build to justify it, and it just felt like a gimmick for the sake of a gimmick. And this sort of feels like that. It feels like a gimmick for the sake of a gimmick, where we're just doing it because somebody in the office realized, oh, Lesnar hasn't lost in this match type yet. Maybe we should do that, and maybe that'll make Oba feel like a bigger star. It doesn't. Oba feels exactly the same as he did before he beat or lost to Brock Lesnar. Before, he feels exactly the same as after he beat Brock the first time. Right? He has not gained and not necessarily lost anything since then, but he's just in the same place. And ideally, if you want him to be potentially a world champion by WrestleMania time, you need to keep advancing him further. You need to keep doing stuff with him to get him to that level higher up, other than just dealing with Brock Lesnar over and over and over. The match itself, not bad. It's interesting to see a Brock match go longer than 10 minutes that doesn't have The Undertaker in it or Roman Reigns in it. And I say that because working with Undertaker and Roman Reigns is very much you take it slow and do a lot of walk and brawl, and it's all about how resilient the opponent of Brock Lesnar is in that case. Here, I think it makes Oba look good in that sense, that Oba does not quit. He does not just crumble under an F5 and a few suplexes. Big moment in this match that I think everybody's been talking about is Brock Lesnar hitting a tombstone pile driver on Oba Femi. It's sort of like when AJ Styles was retiring and he was pulling out stuff from other big opponents of his. Or John Cena pulling out some stuff from his big matches against his big rivals. Brock doing a tombstone is nuts. And Oba still kicks out of it. He does not lose to it. Ultimately, the other big point of this is they do the thing where they tear the mat up to expose the boards underneath the ring. And presumably they were setting that up so that Oba could do the fall from grace onto the exposed boards. And Oba, in the moment, makes honestly a really commendable decision there. And he sort of realizes what's going on, and I think it shows that he has that sort of ring presence and IQ as a wrestler to know, hey, this can go horribly wrong, and I don't know necessarily that I'm going to be able to pull this off without maybe breaking Brock's neck or looking like a complete jackass when I trip over this. So they have the mat pulled up, and it's just the boards underneath, right? And with how they have that, the mat itself is sort of wadded up in the center of the ring, so it's not even at all to stand on, and it's all kind of loose fabrics there in like a pile wad right there in the center of the ring. And Oba gets Brock up in the powerbomb position to do the fall from grace, and seemingly he was supposed to take a few steps forward and hit that onto the boards, but in the moment realize, like, because of how this is all bunched up, I don't have very good footing. And if I slip just a little bit, this whole spot's going to fall apart and it's not going to look good. Because Brock is not on the ground. Brock has no way to control any of this, other than, like, maybe shifting his weight a little bit. And that is marginal at best what that is going to do. So it is all on Oba. He has got Brock up. This is all Oba's spot. And he realizes, I can't walk forward and probably not trip. So I'm just going to hit the move anyway, and that's going to be the finish. And I think it was a good call. And I think it shows that he not only cares about putting on good matches and making everything look good, but also cares about the safety of himself and his opponents, and has the presence and the knowledge already this early in his career to go, hey, that's maybe a bad idea. And I think that shows that they have got a big star on their hands for the future. But Oba wins, and on Tuesday this past week, Brock made it quote-unquote official. He is retired. That was his last match, and it does have some sense of finality to it, but again, I don't know that I buy it. I think that if the paycheck is right and the creative is right, Brock will be back in 5 months. We move on from there to night 2 of SummerSlam. I almost said WrestleMania. Of SummerSlam. Which opens up with what was originally a singles match to determine a number 1 contender for the Undisputed Championship between Finn Balor and Sami Zayn. And we get Nick Aldis come out after Balor and Zayn have made their entrances, wearing his suit with the authority of SmackDown General Manager, which I guess on the night 1 post-show thing, Triple H reinstated Nick Aldis. Okay, cool, I guess. So we did this whole big storyline thing where Nick Aldis had to give up his power so that he could wrestle, because there is a bylaw in WWE's contracts that if you are seen as an official with a position of power within WWE, you can no longer be an in-ring competitor. You must relinquish that power in order to compete in the ring. And so Nick Aldis gives that up to have this match with Gunther, and then not even 24 hours later, oh, by the way, you're reinstated to SmackDown GM. You can get back to work now because you had your match. And I go, oh, that would have been much cooler to see that play out, I don't know, on TV, where we can do a little bit of something with that. Or at least prolong it longer than, I don't know, 20 hours. But what do I know? Anyway, Nick Aldis hits the stage, says he's adding some competitors to this match. Gunther's music hits. And I think that's a really interesting thing that also did not get played up whatsoever. That Nick Aldis has found a renewed respect for Gunther, now having wrestled him and lost to him. He has sort of a renewed respect for Gunther and what he does, and sees him as that bigger guy again. And so we're going to put him in this match, because I think he's earned it. I think he is right, thinking about it now, that he has sort of been screwed out of these opportunities, and should be involved in this stuff. Okay, cool. Gunther's in there, we're going to have a triple threat. And then Aldis says, I didn't say it was just one competitor. And we get the return of Kevin Owens, which was awesome. I had not seen any reports that Owens was cleared to compete, or that there were any rumors that he was going to be actually on the show at SummerSlam. This surprised the hell out of me, and that is good. I love that I did not know that this was happening. Kevin Owens' music hits, and my jaw dropped. I looked like Sami Zayn in that moment. Great to see KO back. He is one of those guys that he just brings a renewed energy and life to anything that he does. There's never a moment where, even when he's doing lower card stuff, it almost always feels like, yeah, this guy's got that energy and that presence that makes you want to watch what he's doing, and you have to watch it. So it's good to see KO back. So it's Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Gunther, and Sami Zayn in the 4-way to determine this number 1 contender, which is ultimately won by Kevin Owens, who hits a stunner and wins. And Kevin Owens is now the number 1 contender for CM Punk's Undisputed Championship. Yes, 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 take my money. I don't think Kevin Steen, CM Punk in like Ring of Honor, they would have been, I think maybe the tail end of Punk's run in Ring of Honor. Steen would have just been coming into that company, so they would have shared a locker room there, but never crossed paths whatsoever. Obviously, Punk never would have gone to PWG in any major way when Steen was there, because he'd been WWE from that point on. And I think by the time Kevin Owens hits the main roster in WWE, I think Punk was gone by that point. I think Owens was still in NXT when Punk leaves the first time. So I don't think these guys have ever actually had a match against each other that I can think of. So we get a fresh matchup between two guys that actually, are sort of seen as indie darlings of different generations. Punk was the indie darling of the early 2000s. Owens was the indie darling of the 2010s. And we finally get to see these two have a match, and on top of that, I think there is sort of like the CM Punk Eddie Kingston thing in AEW. I believe there is a little bit of bad blood because Punk made comments about Kevin Steen and his appearance. How he wrestles in a t-shirt and wears, basketball shorts, and he does not have the physique of a pro wrestler. So it'll be interesting to see if they tie that kind of stuff into this. Now, I will say, we got to figure out who's going to be the heel here. Is it going to be Punk or is it going to be Owens? If I were doing it, I think it would need to be Punk as the heel. Because if you're going to tie that stuff in there, and I'm not saying they will, I don't even foresee them doing that necessarily. I think it'll end up just kind of being another vanilla challenger going after title storyline, because that's about one of the only things they do these days. But if they wanted to tie that in and make it feel more big time and real, I think you have to make Punk the bad guy in that case, because he's going to be commenting on how Kevin Owens doesn't look like a superstar. So that really is the big thing out of this. Not only is Kevin Owens back, he's back in the main event scene and is going towards a match with CM Punk in the near future. That is all very exciting. As for the match, it went 8.5 minutes for a fatal 4-way match. You went 8.5 minutes, and a fatal 4-way match with these 4 guys in it. This is one of those things you could have main evented a show with these 4 guys in there. Or at least certainly given them at least 15 in the ring. We could have gone 15, 20 minutes with these guys in there. And it would have been incredible. And instead it was kind of just everybody get in, do their spot until we get to the finish. And that's really disappointing. In fact, it was the second shortest match on the card for night 2, and I believe the third shortest match overall. For a 4-way match that sees the return of Kevin Owens and the other competitors being Finn Balor, Gunther, and Sami Zayn. Bad. We move on, speaking of bad, to the United States Championship match. Trick Williams defending against Baron Corbin. In the year of our Lord, 2026, Baron Corbin is once again United States Champion. He wins another singles title in this company, and I wanted to run my head through a brick wall. Now, to be fair to Corbin, as Bishop Dyer on the Indies, he's been doing some decent work. And it's sort of been the story of his career, right? Because even in his first WWE run, I always was looking at him going, yeah, you're doing decent work, but for some reason the people in charge here see you as a bigger star than you ever are going to be. Right? They see you as somebody who should be omnipresent on the programming, should be put in these positions of power, and when they're not, being given gimmicks and time on TV every single week to go out there and wrestle a mediocre match. And he sort of continued that when he went to MLW after his release. And, left there as a reigning tag team champion. They had to vacate the belts, I believe, just to come back to WWE. And yeah, I think this is his first match he's had since he came back. And his first match, he wins the United States Championship from a young guy in Trick Williams, who at one point this year was super over. I think that's sort of faltered a little bit because this U.S. title run has not been great. But I think Trick has a lot of upside. I think Trick could someday be a big, big star for this company. I don't know that they're on the right path for that because they keep doing weird things with him and his presentation. And maybe this is a way of saying, hey, Trick, we're gonna give you a bigger shot somewhere else. But again, with how crowded that main event scene on SmackDown looks right now, I don't know where you put Trick Williams other than the U.S. title picture. Unless you move him over to Raw and put him over there. And maybe give him a shot over there against somebody. But even then, he does not feel right now like he is at that main event level. He feels like he is U.S. title, Intercontinental title. That's sort of where he belongs at. So we'll see what happens there. As for Baron Corbin, I mean, it's a Baron Corbin match. Went 9 minutes. Sort of just bland and forgettable. Him and Trick have absolutely zero chemistry in the ring. And he ends up winning the belt. And I just went, why are we yearning for 2016, 2017 WWE at this point? Why is that the nostalgia act and the days that we're pining for, when living through it, it was not particularly good on the whole? There were some good bits and pieces in there, and certainly there was a lot of potential there for them to have a big renaissance period that doesn't come for years after that. But why are we hunting this down? I mean, we've got Baron Corbin, we've got Big Cass back. I don't know what we're doing with this. But I guess good for Baron Corbin. Which takes us into the 5-way ladder match to determine an interim women's champion. As Charlotte Flair, Jade Cargill, Chelsea Green, Lash Legend, and Tiffany Stratton compete for the interim title. Weirdly, before I sat down to record this, the news came across that I believe Rhea Ripley ended up having surgery for her injury and is likely going to end up just vacating her belt anyway. Which, in retrospect, makes this whole interim championship thing even dumber. Like, not even a full week after the show happens, turns out, yeah, actually she had surgery and she has to vacate the belt anyway. Okay, so then why did we bother doing the whole interim bullshit? Why did we not just have her vacate the belt and do this for the proper title then? If we were just gonna have her vacate it anyway. And I understand they maybe didn't know if she was gonna need surgery or not at that point. But if you're unsure, but you know that that conversation is going to be had very soon, you should just strip her of the belt and put it on somebody else. And then when she comes back from injury, when she comes back from her recovery, you can put her straight back into that title picture, and it'll be a good challenger for whoever's champion at that point. It'll give them something really interesting to do against Rhea Ripley, and presumably Rhea just wins the belt back. And you can go back to what you planned on doing in the first place. Going into this match, I figured the only person who was going to be able to win this match was Charlotte Flair. I looked at this pool of talent and I went, yeah, Tiffany's already currently US champion. We don't need to give Tiffany both straps. It just doesn't make sense to double belt her up. Especially because she was champion and, that reign was a mixed reign, and sort of she feels like she's fallen back down the card since then. Lash Legend is exclusively a tag wrestler. She's partners with Nia Jax. She is so green and unready to be on that level. You just wouldn't do it. Jade Cargill was just champion before Rhea Ripley, so it feels weird to just run that back right away, especially when her first title reign was so bad, where I think she defended the belt once in February against Jordynne Grace, and that was the only defense she had from winning the belt in like November or October. And it was just clear that they did not trust her to go out there and put on world title caliber matches, and she has not improved at all. She's not gotten worse in the ring, but she's not gotten better in the ring either. And that's sort of been the entire story of Jade Cargill's career since AEW. She made steady improvements for a while in AEW, because she came from brand new to at least experienced. So she was getting progressively, very intermittently better as the weeks went on with her TBS title reign, and then kind of hit her peak, it seems like, and plateaued. And she has been on that plateau ever since. And no amount of going to WWE and going to the Performance Center and being given the world title and being put with Bianca Belair and Naomi, or having matches with Charlotte or Rhea, has done anything to improve her as a wrestler. She is in the exact same spot she started in when she came here. And I always think about Triple H's comments about, like, yeah, we need to send her to the Performance Center and train her properly because she's never had proper training. Taking a dig at AEW and the way that they build talent. And it's like, listen, Jade felt like a bigger star when she was in AEW, and she was at least improving when she was over there. She has stayed in exactly the same level of work since she came in here. So I don't know what this magic serum you think you have is that brings out all of the potential in somebody, but you didn't give it to Jade. And then Chelsea Green, beloved. I don't necessarily love her as a babyface. I think that's kind of a weird role for her to be in, and she always works better as a heel because she's got that sort of demeanor to her. But Chelsea, genuinely beloved right now. I think she's riding a wave of momentum, and people really like her, myself included. I think Chelsea's a ton of fun. But also, on top of that, I look at Chelsea and I go, she's a ton of fun. Not a world champion, ever. Like, she's okay in the ring, but it is solely the character work and how fun it is that makes me love Chelsea Green. And now we're sort of stripping that away because we're making her sort of bland babyface. And then the in-ring work does not necessarily back that up. So I'm worried about what she's doing. And also, I think the company just kind of sees her, on the whole, as solid mid-card pseudo-comedy act. And that's just the level she's at. So I look at Charlotte, I'm like, Charlotte, one of the most decorated women in this entire company's history, if not the most decorated woman in this company's entire history. They keep bringing up her chasing her dad's record for world titles. It seems like a no-brainer. Just give her this one, right? She's doing something with Jade, so you've already got a built-in feud for the title to go forward while Rhea's gone. Clearly, I think they want to run a third match in the trilogy at WrestleMania between Charlotte and Rhea, because they're 1-1 against each other at WrestleMania. It would make sense to run that back for a third time, the rubber match, to see who is ultimately the better of the two. So you've got that, presuming Rhea is back in time for WrestleMania. You can immediately put Rhea into that spot against Charlotte. And Charlotte is kind of all-reliable. She will go out there and she will give you a solid title reign, where she puts on good to great matches most of the time. You know, she has a built-in feud with Jade. She could immediately go and start feuding with somebody else after that. So it just is like, it makes sense to do that. So I was shocked when Chelsea won it. Chelsea winning this belt is an interesting choice, a surprising choice, and not necessarily one I hate. Like I said, I don't think Chelsea is anywhere near the worker that, you know, somebody like Charlotte or even Tiffany is in this match. And I think that her biggest bright spot is her character work, but making her sort of generic baby face that comes out and helps run off the bad guys, it takes away a lot of her character work. It's sort of taking away her biggest strength. and I don't know that I love that. So I'm concerned about where this is going to go. But I am supremely happy for Chelsea. She is somebody who's worked her ass off to get to this point. She has gone through so many ups and downs in her career, and it is a cool moment to see her win it. And my goodness, that reaction when she wins the belt, that is genuine. That is what WWE keeps trying to artificially create every single week with their show, and it's clear they keep trying to artificially make you react like that. And I hope that hearing that reaction Chelsea Green gets when she wins this belt opens their eyes to the fact that you cannot artificially create that kind of fan reaction to somebody. You need to build that organically and have those moments happen organically. So, good for Chelsea Green. Ultimately, a decent ladder match, but nothing to write home about because, again, there are some workers in this match who are not particularly good. But the ladder match and the multi-woman setup helps to hide a lot of that. We move on to the Human Monies on a Pole match as Dominic Mysterio tries to get back the $100,000 from Danhausen. Kill me now. Please. Run me over in the street. I beg you. Anything to not have to watch this again. Listen, Danhausen's a lot of fun. I've liked Danhausen for a long time. I think he's a funny guy. I think he's got a very unique, interesting look to him in presentation. I think he fits so perfectly into the WWE mold, so long as they do not do what they do to every comedy act, where they keep pushing them because they know people find it funny, and they find it funny too, and they also like that they make a ton of money off of it. But when you push a comedy act, and you keep pushing a comedy act, and you keep doing it every single week, and it's like multiple segments every week, and then they're getting big matches where they're beating people they have no reason they should be beating, you make the fans turn on it, because they get sick of the joke. If you don't keep it fresh and interesting, and keep adding new layers to the joke, or you just keep running the same joke over and over, and you do it several times an episode, several times a week, the joke gets old, and people turn on it. People no longer find it funny or interesting. They're no longer laughing. They're just sick of it and want it to stop. They are annoyed and tired of it. And I've seen it already. There are plenty of people who are already sick and tired and annoyed of Danhausen. I haven't reached that point quite yet, because I think he is such a funny guy and most of the time knows what he's doing. But I do think WWE is pushing Danhausen way too hard, and they are 1 or 2 months away from the joke being over, people being sick of it, and nobody wanting to see him, and people outright booing Danhausen. You need to cool it. You need to pace this thing better. You know, it's sort of the thing of comedy, right? You can do the same joke like 2 or 3 times, right? It's the rule of threes. It's funny the first time, it gets even funnier the second time, and nobody's ever expecting the third time, so it renews how funny it is sort of that principle. But after that, everybody knows to expect it now. Everybody's waiting for it to happen. And it makes it less funny progressively each time after that, to the point where nobody's reacting to it anymore. I mean, look at what happened to R-Truth, right? R-Truth went from being supremely funny and one of the most interesting, humorous presences on TV to, for a while there, he was on every episode of every show doing the same shtick. The point people went like, alright, enough, I'm tired of this R-Truth bit, can we move on to something else? And then they sort of used him intermittently after that. And it did wonders for him. I mean, and R-Truth is one of the funniest people ever. That dude is hilarious. And even then, they couldn't quite get it right. This match, it goes, like, not even 7 minutes for a pole match that Danhausen ends up winning. As I predicted, I knew. Because it was one of those things of Dominic Mysterio needs to win this match. If Dom does not win this match, you might as well just stick him behind JD McDonough in Judgment Day segments from now on. right? He no longer matters. He is just there to be Liv Morgan's boyfriend. And that's where he's at. And keep in mind, this dude is the reigning AAA Mega Champion. This dude is a world champion right now, and he is losing a money on a pole match to Danhausen on one of the biggest shows of WWE's calendar year. It's fun enough, I guess. You get all the big crazy antics. You get, the mini Housens coming out and doing stuff. You have JD come out and fight all the mini Housens. You have Joe Hendry come out and hit JD with a guitar. You have Dom going up to the top rope and Danhausen doing the curse, and then Pyro goes off. But I don't know. There's something specific about WWE comedy matches that just irks me in such a way. Right? Because, yeah, it's fun, and it's be fun on TV somewhere as like a just random match on Raw to build up to a big pay-per-view match. And if you sort of limited it to, like, Danhausen does the curse, and it knocks Dom off the rope, and that's what gets Danhausen a chance to win the match, I mean, sure, that's fine. It's just an isolated spot in here. But it's the overbooked sort of, we keep doing everything. Just to get the reveal, by the way, at the end of this, when Danhausen gets the sack of money off the pole, it's Danhausen dollars. It's Dollarhausens. It's not even real money. It's fake money with Danhausen's face on it. Which is like a funny bit that he would do, but it undermines the entire point of the stipulation being here, because to Judgment Day, to Dominic Mysterio, JD McDonough, and the rest of Judgment Day, that was a real US $100,000 that they got taken from them. So what happens if Dom had won this match, right? He gets the sack, pulls it open, and it's Danhausen dollars. And then the feud continues. So it's like, there's a lose-lose. This needed to be the blow-off to this feud. We need to move the Judgment Day away from Danhausen now. Just let it be. It's over. Do anything else that's more serious with Dominic Mysterio, please. And you have this finish where Danhausen won $100,000, but it's $100,000 of his own fake money. Just so he can throw it out to the crowd and go, the people love me! And if Dom had won it, he would have opened up the bag and it would have been fake money and he would have been pissed. And honestly, that would have been a better finish for this. Dom wins the match, he gets the money off the pole, and he thinks like, because you can do the spot in this match. Danhausen curses Dom. He still ends up winning the match. He gets the sack off the pole. And he's sort of playing it up like, see, your curse is fake. It doesn't even do anything. And then he opens up the bag. And it's the fake Danhausen money. And that's the curse, is like, oh yeah, you thought you won actual $100,000? No, you won $100,000 of Danhausen's money. Which is fake money with his face on it. And heck, you could have even done the thing of, like the ink bombs that they have at the bank, right? It's like where you watch a movie and like somebody will rob a bank and they open up the money and it activates a little like ink bomb that's in there and it just explodes on their face. You have Dom open up the bag, gets hit in the face with the ink. That's part of the curse, and then he goes and looks at the money, and it's the fake Danhausen money. That would have at least been like a funny conclusion to this. That would have been anything. And at least then you can use that to be like, Dom is pissed now. And he's pissed and he's going to start taking that out on people. And hey, at least Dom beat Danhausen then. You can look at the record books and be like, hey, at least he didn't lose to Danhausen. I don't know, this match irked me in so many ways. And I think there was a better way to get to this point. But whatever, I hope that this is the end of this and we can just move on. And let Danhausen do the more interesting and funny thing that he's doing, which involves Kit Wilson and The Miz. That is far more entertaining and funny to me than any of what he's been doing with Judgment Day. We move on to match number 5 of the night for the Intercontinental Championship. Penta defending the belt against Chad Gable. This match felt like a foregone conclusion before it even happened. SummerSlam in Minneapolis. Chad Gable from Minneapolis. Chad has been on this quest to win the Intercontinental Championship for literal years now, and had an entire side arc where he becomes a fake luchador, gets injured, comes back, has a mask versus mask match, and then becomes a babyface again after all of that, just to arrive back at the Intercontinental Championship, which is currently held by one of the best luchadors of this generation in Penta. Very, very good stuff. That is a strong build for this. And again, in front of a hometown crowd, Chad on a big show, the second biggest show of the year, going after this title that he has been on a quest to win forever, in front of his hometown crowd, in front of his family, his wife and kids. And he ends up winning the big one. Penta taps. Chad Gable wins the Intercontinental Championship. It goes about 11 minutes. One of these matches, again, I wish would have gone longer because these two had the potential to steal the weekend. It was like these guys, Nick Aldis and Gunther. Those were two matches that had the potential to steal the weekend. And both of them went a little too short to do it. But I think they still had a good match for as much time as they were given. It just felt like a TV match is the biggest thing. It felt like a TV match as far as the match itself goes. But then you get the cool moment of Chad. He holds up the belt. He's in front of his hometown crowd. They're not giving him nearly as big a reaction as you would think. And I think a big part of that is the build into this specific match over the last few weeks has not been the greatest. They really needed to heat this up a little more before they got to this point. But, his family gets into the ring and they're celebrating with him. And then because WWE cannot help themselves, you have some asshole dressed as the Mug Root Beer Bulldog get onto the ring apron and get in the ring and celebrate with Chad Gable and his family like he is involved in this in any way. As a shitty advertising ploy. One of the most heartfelt, genuine moments you have on this entire show, and you completely ruin it because you need to get your ad revenue. Because for some reason, Mug Root Beer wanted to sponsor Chad Gable finally achieving one of his life goals. Fuck you. Alright. With that said, let's move on to the main event of Night 2, the main event of the entire show. For the World Heavyweight Championship, Roman Reigns defending against Seth Rollins. And talking about seeing Baron Corbin winning a title, wanting to drive my head through a wall. Or perhaps Danhausen beating Dominic Mysterio, or even the awfulness of Chad Gable's celebration being crashed by the Mug Root Beer mascot. We get to a match that from the moment it was announced, I wanted to put my head through my monitor. Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins is the John Cena versus Randy Orton of our times. Overbooked. It seems like every single time that they need to have Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns have a big match, it has to be against each other. It seems like they just they cannot help themselves. They have to put these two together. And every single time the build is exactly the same. We were in the Shield together. We were brothers in the Shield. And you betrayed me. And so now I don't trust you. And I don't like you. And we're going to do all of the things. We're going to have somebody come out to the Shield music. We're going to do the powerbomb spot to the announce table. We're gonna get out the steel chair and set up the steel chair, because remember, it's the Shield chair. It's the Shield chair. Remember the Shield chair? And then we're gonna do a spot where we do the Shield fist. Remember the Shield? Remember the Shield? Remember the Shield, everybody? Remember the Shield? Yes, I remember the Shield! You remind me every single time these two interact on TV, incessantly, that they have been in the Shield together. I know, I was there. I remember when the Shield debuted. I was there. I have seen their entire WWE careers, and I know that they are capable of doing more than just, we were brothers in the Shield. Remember when we were in the Shield? Remember when we were friends? Not anymore. God damn, I hate it every time now. I'm so sick and tired of doing the Shield stuff. It's not interesting anymore. You've been doing it for a decade now, where these two have a match and you do stuff with the Shield, and it was interesting in 2018 was the last time it was interesting ever. Stop doing the Shield callbacks. Stop trying to make fetch happen. You don't even have the third member of the Shield in this company anymore to fully do it. He is having a killer run over in AEW where he is treated as one of the biggest stars in the company. He's not coming back anytime soon. You are missing one of the key members of the Shield. So why do we keep doing all the Shield stuff? Just let them have a feud over anything else. And maybe you can, lightly bring up they have history with each other. You can have, them end up teaming together for some reason, and they end up on speaking terms again. And then something goes wrong where one of them does something underhanded behind the other one's back. And you sort of go I knew I couldn't trust you. And that is it. That is all you need to do with it. And people are immediately going to know because you tell them every single time, because you think your audience is fucking mouth-breathing, covered in their own drool and snot fucking morons who can't remember what happened 5 minutes ago, let alone 5 years ago. It is the worst kind of key jangling, where you key jangle because you are talking down to the audience thinking that they cannot remember the details of what have happened. And then we get this match going 33 minutes, and it is every Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins match you've ever seen. I've seen these guys wrestle 30, 40 times at this point? I have seen every one of these matches these two have had with each other. This is the same one they always do, and it's not bad necessarily, but it's the same thing as back in the day when you would get John Cena and Randy Orton over and over and over. Yeah, they'll have a good match here or there, sometimes even a great match, but most of the time, it's the same match you've seen a million times before, and it's not interesting. And it just gets boring. This match was so boring because it is every other Seth Rollins Roman Reigns match I've ever seen, and it's all the same story beats, and it's all the same things. The only interesting thing they did with this, and honestly it's the only thing that makes me happy about anything involving this match, is they seem to finally put some finality into the whole Shield brothers fighting each other thing, where neither one of them ends up using the steel chair, and they put it off to the side, and they do the Shield fist and show respect to each other. I swear I have seen these two do the Shield fist thing and have respect for each other 7 other times before this, but for once they finally didn't use the steel chair. They both threw it away and made the conscious decision not to go down that route anymore because they've been doing it forever, and they're sick and tired of it like the rest of us are. That one little crumb is the one interesting thing they did here that makes me think, are we finally done? Is this finally the end of the whole Shield thing? Can we move on? And we'll see. I don't buy it. I think we're going to get to a point in a couple years where, because WWE does not build up proper stars into the main event anymore, they just rely on all the people they've had around for ages now to be the main event scene, and they will promote somebody who is beloved by fans for about a month or two, beat them like a drum, and then send them back down to the mid-card. I think we're going to get to a point where the only people they have left available they haven't run a main event match with recently are going to be Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. And we're going to be right back to square one. Because why would I think anything else? You've been doing it for the last 10, 12 years. Why would I think that you're going to change now? Roman Reigns ends up beating Seth Rollins in a decision that, makes sense. Roman is probably not going to lose this belt to Seth, and really they're just setting up more stuff for Roman, and it feels like they're just having Roman hold on to the belt until Obafemi beats him. That's kind of where we're at right now with this. For as interesting as the SmackDown main event scene is currently, the Raw main event scene is dire. It is bad over there. They need some help terribly. And with that, we conclude SummerSlam. Overall, I think night one was the better night of the two, but they're very comparable to each other. It's not like one is significantly better than the other, right? Night two is the one that had the actual, like, cool, surprise, big moments that were like, the feeling is back, right? For the first time in ages, we're getting surprises. We're getting interesting booking decisions. We're getting things happening that just feel good and have been at least properly built up and are payoffs to things that have been building for a long time. Night one has it a little bit too. Gunther Nick Aldis being the prime example, as well as Obafemi Brock Lesnar. But the highs of night two are very high, but the lows of night two are dreadfully low. So overall, I think a solid show. I would probably give night one 3.5 stars and night two 3.25 stars. If I was gonna put a star rating to them, that's probably where I'm at. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Of course, if you want to have discussions about everything down there, let's have them. Let's have our opinions. And again, I'm gonna remind people, these are just my opinions. You could absolutely have loved Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, and I can absolutely see that, and I think that you were valid if you thought that. I just didn't, because I'm sick and tired of seeing these two fight each other and do the exact same thing every single time. But, we can have discussions about that. We can have discussions about everything on this show and everything in wrestling. I ask that everybody be respectful and kind to each other. There's no reason to get into shouting matches or name-calling or being just generally pricks over what is somebody's opinion, man. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep up with my coverage of different wrestling shows, I think the next thing that we'll end up doing is the predictions for AEW's All In when that comes up towards the end of the month. Until then, probably be a little bit of silence on here unless I think of something I want to cover or talk about. But thank you all for checking this out. If you enjoyed, subscribe and keep up with what I'm doing. And as always, everybody, goodbye and good night.